A young nurse donates blood to a stranger, unaware he's a millionaire, single dad who will soon reappear in her life. The emergency room was chaos. Monitors beeped, phones rang, stretchers rolled in rapid succession, the sharp scent of antiseptic mixed with the coppery tang of blood in the air. Emily moved through the noise like instinct, gloves on, hair tied back, voice calm despite the adrenaline pumping through her veins. "Room 3 needs sutures," someone called. "On it," she answered, though her feet had barely stopped moving since her shift started 6 hours ago. Then the doors burst open again. A gurney flew in, flanked by paramedics. A man lay motionless, his chest bandaged, a deep gash across his abdomen soaking through the gauze. "Male, mid-30s, car crash on 84, BP dropping fast. Internal bleeding suspected," the paramedic shouted as they wheeled him through. Dr. Chen, one of the senior emergency room doctors, was already pulling gloves on. "What's his blood type?" one of the nurses called from the computer. "AB negative." Emily felt her heart skip. Dr. Chen cursed under his breath. "We're out of AB negative. The last unit was used in surgery an hour ago." Emily's voice cut through. "I'm AB negative." The team froze. She stepped forward. "Steady. Draw from me. I'm healthy, cleared, no meds. You can take what you need." Dr. Chen blinked. "Emily?" "There's no time. You said he's crashing." He looked at her for a beat longer, then nodded. "Get her to transfusion, now." Emily followed without hesitation, her pulse matching the urgency in the room. As the needle slid into her arm, she watched the bag begin to fill with her blood. The nurse beside her asked quietly, "You sure about this? Donating in the middle of a shift?" Emily gave a small smile. "What's the alternative? Let someone die because it's inconvenient?" The nurse didn't argue. Moments later, her blood was being rushed into surgery. Emily sat in recovery for just 20 minutes before she was back on her feet, sipping water, head clear. She wasn't the type to rest when she knew someone's life still hung in the balance. She walked past the OR waiting area where she overheard a paramedic whisper to a colleague, "His daughter's 6. They were on their way home from her school recital. She's with a neighbor now, asking if her dad's going to be okay." Emily stopped, heart tightening. She never even saw his face, didn't know his name. All she knew was that he was a father, that there was a little girl out there who might lose the person she loved most in the world. She sat in the quiet break room for a moment longer, hands still tingling slightly, before she stood again, tying her hair back tighter. There were still patients to care for. By morning, the man was stable. He had made it through surgery. Emily was walking down the hallway when she saw Dr. Chen emerge from the OR, removing his gloves. He spotted her and nodded once. "You saved him." She gave a soft shrug. "I just did what anyone would do." But the look he gave her said otherwise. Emily turned back toward the nurse's station, letting the soft hum of the hospital swallow her once more. She had no idea who the man was. She didn't know his story, what he did, or where he was headed when life turned on him. All she knew was this: she had the power to keep his story from ending. And that was enough. The apartment was quiet. Emily shut the door behind her and leaned against it for a moment, letting the silence settle around her like a blanket. The hallway light buzzed faintly above. She didn't bother turning on anything else. She knew the layout by heart. Every creaky floorboard, every scuff mark on the cabinets, every corner that held traces of her solitude. She dropped her bag on the worn-out couch and slipped off her shoes, then made her way to the small kitchenette, filling a glass with water. Her reflection in the window above the sink stared back. Tired eyes, pale cheeks, hair pulled back in a messy knot. She looked exactly how she felt, used up, poured out, but somehow still standing. Her phone buzzed. "Maya, you alive?" Emily smiled faintly and typed back, "Emily, barely. Want to come over tomorrow? I need breakfast and brutal honesty." Maya, "Only if there's coffee." She put the phone down and curled up on the couch with a blanket and a heating pad, her body finally remembering it had limits. Her mind, however, kept circling, like it always did after nights like this. She thought about the man she had donated blood for, the little girl waiting for him, the way life could fracture so quickly, and how sometimes A stranger's blood might be the only thing holding someone together. She didn't need recognition. That wasn't why she'd done it. But a small part of her, deep down, wanted someone to understand what that choice had cost her, not just physically, but emotionally. People always assumed kindness came easily to her. They didn't know how often it had come back to bite her, like Nick. Her ex-boyfriend had once told her she was too selfless for her own good. At first, it had sounded like admiration, but over time it became a weapon. He took advantage of her generosity, borrowed money he never returned, asked her to rearrange her shifts for him, guilt-tripped her into staying when she was exhausted. The day she finally left was the day she realized being kind didn't mean letting yourself be broken. Still, even now, months later, a quiet ache lingered. Proof that giving your heart, even in good faith, didn't always end in gratitude. But Emily had never stopped giving. She just gave differently now, more carefully, more intentionally. Not because the world deserved it, but because she couldn't bear the thought of becoming cold. That would be losing herself entirely. The next morning, Maya showed up in pajama pants and with 2 muffins in hand. They sat cross-legged on the living room floor, sipping coffee from mismatched mugs. "You look like you lost a wrestling match with an ambulance," Maya said, eyeing her. "I kind of did," Emily laughed softly. "It was a rough night." "Tell me." Emily hesitated. Then, quietly, she told her about the patient, the blood type, the little girl. Maya blinked. "You gave blood? During your shift?" "There was no one else. He would have died." "You don't even know him." "I didn't need to," Emily said. "I just couldn't not do something." Maya exhaled, shaking her head in a mix of awe and concern. "Sometimes I think your heart's too big for your own body." Emily smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "I just wonder sometimes," she murmured, "if it's stupid. Like, is it naive to keep showing up, to keep helping, when the world keeps proving it doesn't really care?" Maya reached over and squeezed her hand. "It's not stupid," she said. "It's brave. Maybe even rare, but definitely not stupid." Emily looked down at their hands, her fingers still bruised faintly from the IV the night before. "I don't know if what I do matters," she whispered, "but I know that not doing anything, that would haunt me worse." And with that, she knew, whatever life threw at her, whatever heartbreaks or disappointments came next, she wouldn't stop being who she was. Because some people are built to heal, even when no one's watching. The hospital courtyard on the pediatric floor was unusually lively that Saturday afternoon. Emily had stopped by on her day off to drop off a box of donated books for the children's reading corner. It was a routine she'd kept for months. Small gestures for the little ones, who spent far too many days between IV poles and exam rooms. The courtyard had been designed like a miniature park, with winding paths, shaded benches, and a small play area surrounded by flower beds. It was a rare patch of joy tucked inside the otherwise sterile world of medicine. She stepped into the sunlight and paused. A little girl with pigtails was running across the grass, her laugh high and bright. She was chasing bubbles, arms flailing joyfully, until she turned suddenly and shouted, "Daddy, look, I caught 2!" Emily's eyes followed the voice and landed on the man sitting on a bench nearby. Tall, strong build, a soft navy sweater stretched across broad shoulders. His posture was slightly tense, like he was holding himself carefully together. One arm rested across his lap, but the other hand absently rubbed his left shoulder, a wince flickering across his face when he moved too fast. He was smiling at the girl, not distractedly, not with the thin politeness of a tired parent, but fully, as if everything else in the world had fallen away. Then the girl ran up to him and said, "Daddy, sit, please." "Your shoulder still hurts," the man chuckled, brushing a lock of hair from her forehead. "It's fine, sweetheart. Promise?" He paused, then lowered himself gently onto the bench. "Promise." Emily froze. There was something about him, something familiar, not in a superficial way, but deeper. A feeling in her gut that tugged hard at memory, Then she saw the bandage peeking out beneath the edge of his sweater, near the same shoulder he favored. It hit her. The blood transfusion, the car accident, the emergency surgery. It was him, the man she had donated blood for, the one whose daughter had waited, scared and alone, for her father to come back. She hadn't seen his face that night. He'd been unconscious, barely holding on, but now, seeing him here, alive and laughing, made her breath catch in her throat. She felt a strange, warm pressure build behind her eyes. He was here, whole, present. She could have turned away, could have walked past and let it remain a quiet truth known only to her. But instead, she stayed, watching, silently, not as a savior, but as a witness. After a moment, the man looked up and caught her gaze. Their eyes met. Emily's heart skipped. He offered a polite nod, the kind strangers exchange. She nodded back, but said nothing. She wasn't sure she could. Not yet. A nurse stepped out to call the little girl's name, Sophie, for her checkup. The man stood slowly, wincing again as he adjusted his shoulder. Then he took Sophie's hand and they walked toward the pediatric wing. Emily stayed behind, watching their silhouettes disappear through the sliding glass doors, her hand pressed lightly to her chest, as if trying to still the quiet tremor building there. She hadn't planned on this, hadn't planned on feeling anything, but something in that moment, his smile, his softness with his daughter, the fact that he was walking and breathing because of what she had done, made her feel something stir inside her, something she hadn't felt in a long, long time. Hope. Not the kind that asked for love, just the kind that whispered maybe. Maybe life could give back in ways she didn't expect. Maybe goodness did circle back around, quietly, without ceremony, in the form of a little girl with bubbles and a father learning to laugh again. Emily turned and walked slowly toward the staff exit, her steps lighter than before. She didn't know his name, he didn't know hers, but somehow their stories had already touched, and that truth pulsed quietly inside her like a second heartbeat. They began running into each other more often, sometimes in the hallway outside pediatric recovery, other times near the hospital cafe, where the line was always too long and the coffee always a little burnt. Each encounter started with a polite nod, a passing smile, and gradually turned into pauses, short conversations, and eventually intentional visits. Liam wasn't like the other parents Emily interacted with. He didn't try to impress or overshare. He didn't ask prying questions. He simply listened. She liked that. And Liam, for his part, was surprised by how easy it was to talk to her. There was something disarming about Emily. Maybe it was her calm, or the way she never looked at him like he was supposed to be someone else. With her, there was no performance, no titles, just breath and space and sincerity. One afternoon, they found themselves sitting side by side on a bench outside the children's wing. Sophie was inside, coloring with volunteers, and Liam had a few minutes to himself. Emily was on break, a cup of lukewarm tea in her hands. They didn't say much at first. Then Liam turned to her and asked softly, "Do you believe everything happens for a reason?" She considered the question for a moment, then replied, "I believe some things happen without reason, and we give them meaning afterward, because otherwise it's just pain without purpose." He nodded slowly. "My wife died 3 years ago," he said, voice low, steady. "Car accident. It was sudden. Sophie was just 3 at the time." Emily looked at him, not with pity, but with quiet understanding. "I didn't know how to breathe after that," Liam continued, "let alone raise a child. I shut everything out, work, people, emotions. I became a machine, just moving through motion, until the crash a few weeks ago." He hesitated, rubbing his left shoulder instinctively. "They told me I almost didn't make it, internal bleeding. If help had come a minute later—" Emily swallowed, heart tightening. "But someone gave blood," he said, his voice softening. "Someone saved me, and I don't even know who." She looked down at her hands. "I don't remember much from the ambulance," he went on, "but I remember hearing a nurse say, 'There's a little girl waiting for him. Don't let him go.' That stuck with me. It felt like someone out there believed I was still worth saving. Silence stretched between them. Then, almost involuntarily, Emily reached out and gently touched his shoulder, the one he always guarded. Beneath the thin layer of his shirt, she felt the edge of the surgical scar. Faint, raised, healed, but still there. He turned toward her slightly, surprised by the touch, but didn't pull away. She said softly, "Some people survive because of medicine, others because someone stayed." He met her gaze. "Maybe both," he said. Her fingers lingered just a second longer, then dropped gently into her lap. She still didn't tell him, not yet. Not because she wanted to hide, but because, in that moment, it didn't feel like it belonged to her anymore. The story was his now, his life, his second chance. What mattered was what he did with it, and from what she'd seen, he was doing the best he could, with humility, with love for his daughter, and a strength that didn't need to roar to be real. Liam looked down at the cup in her hands, then back up at her. "You always sit like this?" he asked. She raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" "Like someone who's holding something more than a cup," she smiled faintly. "Maybe. But sometimes, holding it is better than spilling it too soon." He chuckled. A real one this time. It made her chest ache in a way she wasn't ready to name. Neither of them said it, but they both felt it. A shift. A seed. Something small and unexpected beginning to grow in the quiet space between them. Liam hadn't meant to overhear the conversation. He had been walking down the corridor on his way to Sophie's therapy session when two doctors paused near the nurses' station, chatting between rounds. "Crazy night," one of them said. "That car crash case a few weeks back, AB negative, bleeding out fast. We were out of blood, ready to lose him." "The nurse, Emily, right?" the other replied. "Volunteered on the spot, didn't even flinch." Liam froze mid-step. His heart thudded. AB negative. That was his blood type. That was his night. He turned slowly, eyes scanning the hallway like he was seeing it for the first time. The colors seemed brighter, the air heavier. Emily. He'd been sitting with her, talking to her, and all this time, she had saved his life. He didn't go to Sophie's session. Instead, he walked straight to the staff lounge and waited. He didn't have to wait long. Emily appeared 15 minutes later, coffee in one hand, clipboard in the other, looking tired but as calm as ever. Their eyes met. He said her name softly. "Emily." She paused. "Liam." "I need to ask you something," he said, voice lower now. She nodded slowly, placing the clipboard down on the counter. He stepped closer. "Was it you?" She didn't pretend not to know what he meant. She just looked at him, steady and quiet, then gave the smallest nod. He exhaled like the air had left his lungs all at once. "You knew," he said. "You knew, and you never told me." "There wasn't a reason to," she said gently. "You were healing. That mattered more." He stared at her. "Why would you do that? For someone you didn't even know?" She held his gaze for a moment longer before she said, "Because someone said your daughter was waiting for you." His breath caught, and I couldn't bear the thought of a little girl losing her father the way I lost my mother, not if I could help. The silence between them pulsed like a living thing. He stepped closer, eyes searching hers. "You gave me back to her, to Sophie, to myself." Emily looked down. I wasn't looking for recognition. I just couldn't stand still and do nothing. Liam reached for her hand. She didn't resist. His palm was warm and firm around hers, fingers trembling slightly. "You didn't just save me," he said, voice thick with emotion. "You made me believe again." "In what?" she asked softly. "In kindness," he whispered, "in the idea that someone might do something selfless, not because they have to, but because it's who they are." She blinked back sudden tears. He squeezed her hand gently. "You reminded me that kindness isn't dead, that maybe it's just quiet now, hiding in people like you." Emily let out a shaky breath, and for the first time since they'd met she felt something shift in her, not just a heartbeat but a letting go, of fear, of walls, of the quiet ache that had lived in her too long. Liam looked at her like she was more than just a nurse, more than a good person, like she was something miraculous, and she felt, for the first time in years, like maybe she was. The day was warm, the sky endless blue, dotted with cotton clouds that drifted like dreams. Liam had suggested the idea midweek, his voice careful but hopeful. "We could go somewhere. Just the three of us. There's a quiet park outside the city. Sophie loves it." Emily had hesitated only briefly before saying yes. Now here they were, spread out on a checkered picnic blanket beneath the shade of a wide oak tree, the sound of laughter floating around them like birdsong. Sophie darted across the grass with a red kite dancing behind her, her tiny hands gripping the string with all her might. Emily sat nearby, cross-legged, her fingers dusted with flour from helping Sophie decorate cookies in the morning. She watched the child run, a soft smile curving her lips. Liam returned from the cooler with lemonade in hand, handing her a cup. "You okay?" "I'm perfect," she said, and meant it. They spent the afternoon in moments so simple they felt sacred, Liam carefully tending to a small fire pit, Emily slicing apples, Sophie braiding flowers into cozy crowns. They ate too many marshmallows and told stories under the sun, their laughter echoing through the trees. It was nothing extravagant, no luxury resort, no expensive gifts. But it felt real, and to Emily it felt new. She hadn't grown up with days like this. Her childhood had been tight with worry, her mother working 2 jobs, her home filled with love but little else. After her mother passed, life became even more measured, less spontaneous. Safety and structure had replaced joy, but here, with Liam and Sophie, she found a rhythm that had nothing to do with control, only presence. Later, as the sun dipped low, Sophie curled up on a blanket with a picture book, humming to herself. Emily lay on the grass nearby, watching the way the golden light traced the edges of the trees. Liam sat beside her, his hands loosely clasped, gaze fixed on his daughter. "She's strong," Emily said softly. "She had to be," he replied. "She lost her mom so young. I tried to keep her whole, but there were days I didn't know how to even keep myself standing." Emily turned to him. "You did more than stand. You fought. You stayed." Liam met her eyes. "I had help." She didn't ask what he meant. She didn't have to. Sophie looked up from her book and scampered over to Emily, plopping into her lap without hesitation. She wrapped her arms around Emily's waist and leaned her head against her chest. "Cuddle break," she announced. Emily chuckled, surprised but touched. "Is this a regular part of the picnic routine?" Sophie nodded against her. "You make Daddy smile more than anyone, even more than when he wins at Mario Kart." Emily's breath hitched slightly. Liam, watching, smiled, and something in his chest softened. He watched the two of them, his daughter and the woman who had saved him in more ways than one, wrapped together in a picture that felt like a glimpse into another life, a better one, a future he hadn't dared to hope for. He realized then, sitting under a tree with no noise but the wind and his daughter's breath, that he hadn't felt this still in years, not in boardrooms, not in planes, not in the echoing walls of his glass and marble home, just here, with her, with them. He thought, there are things money can't buy. A day like this, a smile like that, a hand reaching for yours not because of what you own, but because of who you are when you're finally allowed to be human. He thought, maybe this is what a new beginning looks like. And then, quietly, he whispered to himself, I think I've found the one I want to walk the rest of the way with. The rain came down in slow, steady sheets, soft at first, then heavier, soaking the city in a silvery hush. Emily hadn't planned to come by the hospital that evening, but something had tugged at her. A nurse's instinct, maybe, or something deeper. She had stopped by the nurse's station to drop off paperwork when she overheard two residents talking near the records room. Case from last year, internal bleeding near fatal, one said. He's still being monitored. They think the scar tissue might be affecting his liver function. Didn't he refuse the last round of imaging? Emily's steps slowed. The patient ID code flashed in her mind. She recognized it. Liam. Her chest tightened. That night, the rain greeted her as she stood outside his home, fists clenched in the pockets of her coat, heart pounding louder than the storm above. Liam opened the door, surprised, his shirt half-buttoned and a book in hand. "Emily?" She didn't step inside. "You weren't going to tell me," she said, her voice trembling, not with volume but with restraint. He blinked. "Tell you what? That your doctors think the damage might not be gone, that there's a risk of relapse, that you skipped follow-ups." Liam's jaw clenched. "Who told you?" "That doesn't matter," she said, stepping closer. "What matters is you kept it from me." Rain clung to her lashes, ran down her neck. "I didn't want to drag you into something dark," he said quietly. "You've already saved me once. You don't owe me anything else." "I'm not doing this because I owe you," she snapped. "I'm here because I care." He hesitated. "Emily?" She stepped forward. "You think I stayed by your side out of pity. You think I gave blood to a stranger because I felt sorry for him." He looked away. "I did it," she whispered, voice cracking, "because someone told me a little girl was waiting for her dad, because I couldn't bear the thought of kindness leaving this world one person sooner." Liam's shoulders sagged. "I didn't want you to feel trapped," he said, barely audible over the rain. "You deserve a life that isn't shadowed by what-ifs, a partner who doesn't come with warning labels. And you think I haven't had loss? That I don't know what fear feels like?" Her eyes searched his, tears now mixing with the raindrops. "You think I would choose someone safe over someone true?" He didn't answer. He couldn't. She stepped back, hurt blooming across her face. "You keep pushing me away to protect me, but maybe what you're really protecting is your own fear of being loved when you feel broken." Liam's chest rose and fell rapidly, emotion tangled in every breath. The rain soaked them both now, his shirt plastered to his skin, her hair curling with dampness. The world blurred around them, but neither moved. Then, suddenly, he reached out. His hands found hers, wet, trembling, real. "Then don't go," he said, his voice raw. "Please. I don't want to just survive anymore, Emily. I want to live. With you." Her breath caught. "I don't care what the future holds," she said, her voice fierce through her tears. "I just care that we face it together." He pulled her into his arms, and there, in the middle of the storm, two souls found shelter in each other. Not in perfection, not in guarantees, but in truth, and love, and the quiet miracle of choosing to stay. 1 year later, the hospital courtyard had never looked more alive. The space was transformed with white canopies, string lights, and soft music playing over portable speakers. Banners reading, "A Drop of Hope, Annual Blood Drive and Celebration of Life," swayed gently in the spring breeze. Balloons floated beside information booths, and volunteers handed out red ribbons symbolizing life given and life received. Emily stood near the stage, clipboard in hand, her heart full. Her scrubs were replaced with a soft blue dress, hair tied back simply, but her spirit still bore the quiet strength of someone who knew exactly why today mattered. Liam stood nearby, holding a tray of fresh lemonades with Sophie trailing close behind, her pigtails bouncing. The three of them had become a kind of rhythm, one that felt unforced, unshakable. What had started as a single act of compassion had bloomed into something far greater. Their blood drive, once a quiet effort, had grown into a community initiative, Project A Drop of Hope. It connected donors to patients, created support groups for families, and offered education and resources about rare blood types and emergency response. Hospitals in nearby counties had begun to replicate it. Donors wrote letters to recipients. Lives were being saved, but even more, hearts were being changed. As people settled into their seats near the small stage, Emily looked out over the crowd, doctors, patients, nurses, survivors, volunteers, and felt an ache in her chest that could only be described as joy. She stepped to the microphone. "Thank you," she began, her voice steady despite the emotion rising behind it. "Not just for being here, but for believing. A year ago this was just an idea. Today, it's a movement." Applause followed, warm and sincere. She smiled, then turned to Sophie, who was standing beside her, clutching a piece of paper with tiny fingers. Sophie looked up at Emily for reassurance. "You ready, sweetheart?" Liam called from below the stage, his voice laced with pride. She nodded, climbed onto the small wooden step stool someone had placed for her, and leaned into the microphone. "My name is Sophie," she began, her voice clear and sweet. "I'm 6, almost 7. Laughter rippled through the crowd. "My daddy is here today because someone gave him blood when he really needed it. That someone was Emily." She paused, looking up at her. Emily blinked quickly, her throat tightening. Sophie continued, "She's not just a nurse. She's also kind and brave, and she makes the best pancakes when we have sleepovers." More laughter, a few quiet tears. "And I just wanted to say," Sophie's voice softened, "I love my dad. And I love Emily too." She gave him a second heart. "And now we all share it." The crowd was silent for a moment, stunned by the honesty and tenderness of the words. Then came the applause, thunderous and unrestrained. As the clapping swelled, Liam stepped onto the stage beside Sophie. He was wearing a white shirt beneath his hospital coat, his name tag clipped to the pocket. Dr. Liam Harper, donor advocate, project founder. But that wasn't why people were clapping. It was the way he looked at Emily, the way he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. The crowd quieted. Emily stared at him, her breath caught, hands frozen by her sides. Liam knelt. Right there on the stage, under the soft yellow lights, surrounded by life and laughter and the scent of new blossoms, he opened the box. Inside was a ring, delicate, golden, with a tiny red sapphire nestled in the center like a heartbeat. "I don't know how long this life will be," he said, his voice rough with feeling. "I've had enough close calls to know time isn't guaranteed." He looked up at her, eyes shining. "But if I get to spend whatever's left walking beside you, Emily, I know I'll live every second of it." He held out the ring. "Will you marry me?" Emily couldn't speak. Tears fell freely down her cheeks, but her smile broke through them like sunlight after rain. She nodded, then whispered, "Yes." Liam slipped the ring onto her finger. Sophie rushed forward, throwing her arms around both of them. The crowd rose in a standing ovation, cheers mixing with quiet sniffles and grateful hearts. In the distance, someone rang the symbolic bell they used to mark each successful transfusion. A tradition started the day Liam walked out of surgery alive, and under the soft canopy of lights, Emily looked out at the people gathered, strangers and loved ones alike, knowing this wasn't just the end of a journey. It was the beginning of a home, a life forged not from wealth or perfection, but from sacrifice, resilience, and one drop of hope. A love story that had started with blood and ended with a heartbeat shared by 3. Together. Forever. Sometimes, the smallest act, one quiet moment of compassion, can become the turning point of an entire life. Emily gave a drop of blood, and unknowingly gave a father back to his daughter, a man back to his future, and herself a love she never expected. In a world that often forgets the beauty of kindness, this story reminds us that healing, hope, and love often begin in the most unexpected places. If this story moved your heart, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to Soul-Stirring Stories, where every tale is a reminder that even the quietest choices can echo for a lifetime. Until the next story, keep believing in love that heals and kindness that endures.